Welcome, guys. I hope you're ready for some heavy topics and legal talk. There is no way we can get around this. Some of you might have been online or seen the threads about people being upset how designers copy brands and people without giving credit, and might be familiar with the resentment many users have towards the copyright rules of ES. Now let me shed some light on how copyright works, how it works in the fashion industry, and why it's so difficult and simple at the same time, and my unrequested opinion on the matter of crediting. Let's start with the basics. Copyright is the term we use when we talk about the protection of intellectual property. Now that's actually a bit wrong. Copyright is a very specific kind of intellectual property. Intellectual property, short IP, is the umbrella term for intangible creations of the human intellect. That's a bunch of big words for saying that it's ideas and concepts drafted up by the human mind that can't be touched, nor do they deplete after use. No need to get into the nitty-gritty. Let's just talk about two examples of IP that actually relate to designer work on ES. One of them is copyright. Copyright gives its owner the exclusive rights to a creative work. What exactly the law defines to be a creative work depends a lot on the national law of a country. Generally speaking, this usually means it has to be something thought out and distinct, and it has to have a creative value. So to give a few examples of things that fall under copyright, art in general, which means any form of, visual art, be it drawings, statues, photography, but also music pieces, artistic text, so basically any form of text that has an artistic and personal purpose. And then, most notably, characters from books, movies, comics, whatever, but also characters like drag queens and kings and other artistic personas. But copyright is not the only form of IP that designers on Everskies need to be mindful of. The other more important part is trademark and trade dress. Trademark is rather simple and easy to explain. It's logos that help identify the brand owners. Trademarks usually come in handy when it comes to licensing deals. Legit partnerships can be recognized by the use of the trademark, the logo associated with the brand/franchise. And of course, this only works in a perfect world where there is no fakes and scams. But for the sake of the argument, let's pretend the world is perfect. So trade dress is the form of an IP that you can actually find in fashion. Because in the fashion industry, many things don't really get recognized as distinct art. It would be pretty difficult if someone were to hold all legal ownership of the pattern for pants. Could you imagine? No other company would be allowed to make pants without their accord. This is why clothes are deemed functional and are excluded from copyright laws. But there are a few exceptions to the rule. To explain the difference of trademark and trade dress, the Louis Vuitton logo is a trademark. It identifies the brand. But the pattern they have on their clothes made up by the logo is a trade dress, just, like the Burberry tartan, since it identifies the item as being a Louis Vuitton design, but it's not inherent to all Louis Vuitton designs in that form. It is pretty difficult to get a complete item of clothing recognized as a trade dress. The most current case I could find is Dior on their request to register the saddlebag as a trade dress. As of now, anyone can make a handbag in the design of the Dior saddlebag, and it would be alright. Well, as long as they don't put the Dior logo on it, anyone can just make such a bag. But if Dior manages to register the bag as a trade dress, then suddenly bags that share the distinct features protected by said trade dress, the exact features need to be defined on paper for that, would infringe on the IP and Dior could sue. To say it in ES terms, as of now the antagonist saddlebag is fair use, but the second Dior gets the approval for their request, antagonists will have to change some things about the saddlebag as to not put ES in hot water. Now, let's get to the wild west of the fashion industry, more specifically dupes and fakes. You probably already know that fakes are prohibited in the real world. And that's because they use the logo and exact markings of the original designer item and make people believe that it is, in fact, an official release from said brand. They appropriate the IP of the brand and break the law. But what about dupes? Well, this is a really interesting topic. You see, dupes don't pretend to be something they are not. They very clearly lack the logos or crucial elements of the original design. To the untrained eye, or at first glance, you might not recognize it as a dupe, and it might remind you of the real deal. And that's okay, it's absolutely allowed. Occasionally it's even encouraged, though many brands pretend like it's not. If you're really interested in this, please do yourself a favor and check out this amazing TED Talk by Joanna Blakely, I'm going to link it in the description, on the protection of IP in the fashion industry. I had a blast watching it and I learned a whole lot about the finer details in copying fashion. Knowing and understanding these nuances will help you as a designer on ES to not infringe on copyright laws and help you get your designs approved. If you want a bit more of an inside look, I absolutely recommend the Norman Lear Center IP and Copyright playlist by the USC Annenberg channel here on YouTube about intellectual property and copyright with a focus on the fashion industry. Now, what about giving credit? If you've watched the TED Talk, then you know already how the fashion industry, due to its lack of proper protection, is constantly ripping itself off. And here comes the thing. For all the protected arts, you need to credit whenever you use someone's idea or concept to make it your own. Not every creator or rights owner allows every form of use, so sometimes even too close of an inspiration would be illegal. But for fashion, this simply does not exist. So from a purely legal point of view, you don't need to credit it. Now, this brings me back to the threads that were cursing a few months by now ago, where people asked for designers to give credit to the real-life design. Now, the thing is, the inspiration we used might not be the original creator of the item we designed. We would be crediting the wrong one. Needless to say that we couldn't even say in the name what it is based on, since the brand names can't be used for things that aren't from that brand. I mean, remember trademarks? We can choose to still give credit if we say that's the level of respect the designers deserve. We can choose what brands to copy from and what to not touch based on our own moral views. But truth be told, none of us even need to do that. Because just ripping off a design is not illegal. It's not even immoral. Just a reminder though, as soon as someone of us designs something, we draw it and it becomes, art. So if I make a dress, that doesn't mean that you can't make the same dress. You absolutely can. You just can't go ahead and use the design I made specifically and cut parts out, or trace it, or alter it, edit it in any way possible, especially not without asking permission. Now, what does this mean for ES? In short, this means that we designers can just do like we did before. There is still an abundance of things we can't design. For instance, all the Sanrio characters. Yeah, sorry, but those still belong to KK Sanrio and we can't touch them. Same goes for characters from movies and books. But all the rest? Free game. And we actually should use the inspiration from fashion when making our clothes for ES. Because remember that thing about trends? Yeah, they aren't trends for nothing. And recreating them on ES will only help them carry over into the real world to people who wouldn't have been in contact with that trend otherwise. And it could potentially even push that trend being, a driving force in the real life fashion industry. We would, in principle, participate in the same mechanics and systems that fashion brands are operating in when fast fashion companies rip off the designer clothes. So basically, we are just doing it like the fashion brands in real life.